All right, welcome in. State of the Nation. It is January 26th. I always say I want to write that down before we start getting going here. But welcome into State of the Nation. Tyler Yaremchuk, Josh Park, Zach Lang, Nation Dan. Everyone's here live on Twitch, live on Twitter, live on YouTube as well. And it's State of the Nation that comes on a game day, which is always exciting as well. We got some new line combos we're going to talk about and all that good stuff. But first, the fact that the Oilers play every second night, like everyone's talking about how the Canadian division's so much fun. How are we ever going to go back to normal? For me, the toughest part of getting back to normal when the NHL season rolls around next year is going to be like one Oilers game every 3 nights.
I think the only thing that we're at risk of is getting fatigued here. And as people that sit here on the internet and we talk hockey all the time, you're right. I think that we're going to have there's going to be a severe lull for a lot of people, and people tuning into this live video are also going to feel the same way, where, you know, it's like you're going to have a void in your life. Your family is going to have to see more of you. Your friends are going to be asked to hang out, which is going to be weird. Like there's a lot of weirdness coming ahead for us.
Josh Park.
I was just going to say, speaking of voids, how weird was it? We only had one NHL game last night, and it was like an 8 p.m. Mountain Time puck drop between Vancouver and Ottawa.
It was
tell me we couldn't get another damn game last night, people? Come on.
And as a guy that has to clip fights from every game, I fell asleep in the middle of the third period, and I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, oh, God, there's 2 fights I have to go clip. And, of course, they were the absolute worst fights. And so people are really mad online this morning that I even posted them, which is always fun. Hockeyfights.com. Check it out.
What's your rule for what's a fight? Does it need to be 5-minute major, or like when Laine got into that scrap earlier in the year and they didn't give him credit for a fight, even though it was kind of a fight? Like, do you throw those up?
We just kind of have like an internal conversation, which is just literally me talking to myself. Yeah. But we have an internal conversation.
Who are you talking to?
And I have a couple of team members. Chili is my main guy there, but we talk about stuff, and then like in the Laine situation, usually it just ends up on our social media. But we do have the option of posting fights if we decide that there was a fight that they just didn't credit it for. But yes, if there's a fighting major, it's on hockeyfights.com.
You should put a section up on the site of, is it a fight or not, for all the ones that like could be 5-minute majors but aren't, and that can be like the poll is like, should this have been 5 minutes?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a fair point. Stop trying to create more development work for me, Tyler.
I don't need any more work for you.
Yeah, get on that, Dan.
Josh Park coming to us live from the Little Brick offices. JP, what are you up to today?
Yeah, man, I'm here. Me and Jay are here kicking it. We did our pregame show this morning. I just stopped editing that, but we're going to drop it around like 2:30 today. So make sure you keep it locked on Oilers Nation, the Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We're going to drop that. And yeah, just filming that, just getting excited for tonight's game. I am like, when I saw those lineups this morning, those are sus, man. I know, Tyler, you have an opinion on those, but yeah, I'm just confused mostly. It's just a state of confusion for me right now.
Let's dig into the line combos a little bit then. Josh, what did you want different?
I think the biggest thing that kind of surprised me was Cuckoo. I know that you look at Cuckoo's play as of late, and I think he can be an interesting player for fans to watch because he's got the swagger and the sexy type of play that when you're seeing him as just a basic Oilers fan like I am, I'm like, yeah, I like the way he plays. You know, he seems to get around good. He lays the body. He seems like he's always involved in the play. He likes to jump up offensively every once in a while. But then you hear it from more of a critical standpoint, people that, you know, kind of know the game more than I do and kind of look at it from more of a detailed aspect. They're like, okay, he doesn't make a great first pass. A lot of the time it's just puck off the glass. If you're going to pair him with a guy like Adam Larsson, you need him to be able to move the puck well, and that just wasn't happening. So at first when I saw the lineups get released, I was thinking maybe Slater Cuckoo was injured, might have been a little bit banged up, but then obviously Tippett coming out this morning and saying he wanted to get more of a puck mover with Adam Larsson and Caleb Jones. So I thought that was interesting. Personally, for me, I was kind of in the seat that I was hoping that maybe Adam Larsson would get a seat in the press box. I know it's tough to take out arguably your best defender and put him in the press box when he's kind of the only type of that defenseman that you have right now. But I just think he's been struggling so much. It might have not been a bad situation to get him one game, but also at the same time, kind of hard to take a guy out of the press box like that or take a guy out of the lineup like that. But as well, like Jujhar Khaira and Patrick Russell coming in, like why the heck is Shoresy? What did he do so wrong? They got him out of the lineup.
Zach, what do you think about the line combos? and pairings.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think Cuckoo's got to be. I think Cuckoo's an everyday player for the Edmonton Oilers right now. Looking at Mika Blake McCurdy's isolated impact charts, Cuckoo provides offense at a 7% rate higher than league average and defense at a 6% rate higher than league average. And those are really, really, really impressive numbers. I think he does a lot of things really well there on the ice every single night. I think quietly he's been one of the best Oilers. I understand needing to get Caleb Jones back into the lineup. I also think he's a top 6 everyday player, but why is Chris Russell still in there is sort of the question that I keep coming back to. He constantly gets caved in there on the ice in terms of his possession numbers, and there's always some sort of an egregious giveaway at some point from Chris Russell that leads to a high danger chance or a goal against. So other than that, I'm pretty okay with it. I think Jujhar Khaira's got to get back in there into the mix a little bit and see what he can prove at 5-on-5 again. And I think the top 9 played really solid against Winnipeg last game, so I'm okay with keeping that together.
Dan?
Yes.
Your thoughts on the line combos? Would you have done anything different?
I think my biggest annoyance came yesterday. Why is Tyler Ennis getting waived and risking losing his value contract when we have a guy like Alex Chason just sitting there, and you hope that somebody would be desperate enough to pick him up off waivers? Can somebody help me make sense of that? So then you look at that. To me, that third line played really well against the Jets, but the caveat that I'll throw out here, and I think that we have to start kind of thinking this way when it comes to this season especially, is you got to look at it like baseball. We got to win out of this series against the Jets already, and so now is the time to tuck in some rest. I agree with Josh. I think that Adam Larson needed a night off just to like center himself, not necessarily learn anything from getting some rest, but getting some time to center himself. So that's where the forward adjustments make sense to me, except again, I just don't get the Tyler Ennis thing unless he's banged up and they're just willing to let him rest on the taxi squad. But that third line now of James Neal, Turris, and Cassian shouldn't be that bad. Like, Neal hasn't looked out of place like he did later in the season last year with this team, but I really liked what we had with that third line. I've liked what we had with the fourth line with Shoresy again. So yeah, it's I guess it's just like it's give and a take, right? It's the baseball mentality. You got to win out of the series already, so you got to change it up, and it's okay to change it up. But at the same time, I don't get why you break what's already working.
I think it comes back to, like, there are just certain guys I think Dave Tippett trusts more than others. And Patrick Russell, I think, is one of them, because we've seen Patrick Russell get the benefit of the doubt a few times over the last few years here over the last year with Tippett in charge. The thing I loved is when Dave Tippett today said Patrick Russell's been dominant on the taxi squad. And I was kind of like, how are you dominating the taxi squad?
He said he's had some great skates. I'm like, what? He's had some great skates. Like, him and Jim Playfair have been doing lines well. Like, so I don't know what the deal is.
I laughed at that. And then Tippett talked about how, you want to keep guys kind of moving in and out throughout the year, and you want to make sure they're fresh. And I thought, if other guys look at Patrick Russell now and go, he's getting in the lineup because he skated his ass off at practice and he worked his ass off at practice, maybe that's a good thing to do here, is that fourth line spot. Like, if Tyler Ennis now sees that and he's on the taxi squad, he goes, hey, if I skate my ass off, I'm going to get another look right away. And maybe Chason's sitting there going, Patrick Russell's getting in over me. I've played however many more games in the NHL and Russell's getting in over me. Maybe I need to look at how I'm coming to the rink every day. I think it almost creates like a little bit of accountability there within the team in the taxi squad, that this guy, the Dane who barely plays, worked his ass off and is getting in the lineup.
Yeah, but then you risk creating a bunch of giant piss babies as well, right? That look at their contract and say, how do you have me not in the lineup? So it's good.
Be a piss baby. You're not playing then. Have a better attitude.
Yeah. I think we can all agree that we've gotten to the point as a team where our top 3 lines are kind of the 3 horses that are going to drive this team. And really, like, I don't want to be too critical of that fourth line, but is it really going to make that big of an impact, whether Alex Chason or Patrick Russell or Jujhar Khaira is in the lineup? Like, sure, those are guys that you're going to be probably relying on to kill some penalties, which Jujhar Khaira is good at. And those are some guys that you're going to be relying on for some minutes, but really, is that the horse that's going to drive this team? No, it's those top 3 lines. And circling back to what Dan was talking about, and I made a tweet about this yesterday as well, and I really did not understand why they didn't try to waive Alex Chason instead, because obviously there was literally no risk in that. because Tyler, you can probably touch on this, but I would say there was probably a 0.5% chance that any team in the NHL was going to pick up that Alex Chiasson contract. Whereas like Tyler Ennis, I would say obviously the chances were low, but it's never nothing. You know what I mean? So unless they were trying to unload a contract in that situation, because someone tweeted that at me as well. I was like, someone make this clear to me and why they decided to waive Tyler Ennis.
Yeah, it ends up being a bit of a moot point because Ennis cleared and whatever. But for me, I was confused too. Like, throw Chiasson on there and you'd almost like the cap flexibility of not having Alex Chiasson here. And I look at Ennis as a speedy bottom sixer who can give you a little bit of offense. He's got that touch to his game. I watch Chiasson right now, and like at 5-on-5, he's not really doing anything. He just kind of, he doesn't skate well. He has okay touch around the net, but if he's not on the power play, he doesn't do much. So I kind of went, you have Neil now, Puljujarvi's playing some power play minutes. There's really not much of a need for Alex Chiasson here. So I was surprised, but I mean, it worked out. Ken Holland, props to him. He got Ennis through waivers, I guess, and he didn't lose a player here. But I was a little bit confused by that. We are live on Twitch and Twitter, so if you got something to say, hop in the chat on either of those, and we will get to your comments. The other thing, Zach, you touched on it defensively. Chris Russell stays in the lineup. Like, I wasn't mad when they sat Chris Russell. I'm a guy who maybe likes Chris Russell a little bit more than what the numbers say. But for me, do you think this just comes back to Dave Tippett trusts him? And Dave Tippett, like, I know the mistakes come, but it's a trust thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is to an extent, right? I mean, it's Chris Russell. You know what you're getting out of him. You're getting the guy who's going to go out there. He's going to compete. He's going to block shots. He's going to give it 110%. And for any coach in the NHL, those are the kind of guys that you love, right? The numbers aren't great to support Chris Russell, but there is a little bit of upside in his game defensively. And I think it's hard, when you look at the contract that he's been on for the last couple of years, right? If the Oilers are able to do a better job of, protecting him a little bit with defensive zone starts and stuff like that, you can extract a little bit of value there for sure. I think for me at the end of the day, in the way the NHL is playing now, you need your defensemen to be dynamic, and you need them to be able to move the puck. And that's just something that I don't see Chris Russell doing very well. And same thing with Adam Larsson too. Everybody says, Adam Larsson is this defensive defenseman and he shuts players down in the defensive zone. Well, he doesn't really do that either. And, he struggled to move the puck and he's had some pretty egregious giveaways this year. So, but yeah, back to Russell, I think it is definitely a bit of a trust thing for the coaching staff.
The one thing I do really like about Adam Larsson's game is like he's struggling to move the puck, and I'm hoping that him on a pair with Caleb Jones helps a little bit in that. But you're right, Zach. Like the days of a just straight up shutdown defenseman are kind of over. You need to be able to move the puck. The one thing he does really, really well is he breaks up cycles. Like that physical edge in his game, his ability, like he'll just grab a guy, pin him up against the boards, and knock the puck out. And he does that well. And I don't know how great that translates into numbers or anything like that, but I still like having that element of him in the lineup. But I will say, if Bouchard was healthy, I think we would have seen Bouchard in the lineup tonight.
Well, it really sounded like that, like there's this talk now of Bouchard having a back injury, and it really sounded like, the Oilers were ready to give him a look in the lineup. And then I would have definitely liked to have seen a guy like Larsson take a night or two off to be able to go sit and kind of think about what he's done, sort of take his time out, you know what I mean? But it all comes back to accountability for me too, right? The Dave Tippett and the coaching staff held Ethan Bear and Caleb Jones out for a number of games. And they got to hold their veteran players like Zach Kassian and Adam Larsson to the same levels of accountability. And we've seen that happen to an extent with Kassian getting bumped down the lineup. And I think it's time for Larsson to get that same sort of look.
For me with Russell though, like if not for that, that block that just has a nice careen in for the Winnipeg Jets, and Wheeler, didn't plan for that and certainly didn't celebrate it like he planned for it. I think we would be talking pretty positive about the addition of Chris Russell there, especially in that second period. His pinches this year feel like they're smart pinches, which is not true about most of our defense. Darnell Nurse has made some absolute dog poop pinches where, it turns into Kyler Yamamoto back on defense kind of thing. Adam Larsson, the same thing. So I think Russell's play really contributed to the dominance that we saw from the Oilers in the second period there against the Jets. So I'm like nothing is unwarranted when it comes to the criticism of Russell, because there is a lot of issues with his game. We all know that, but I think, Zach, like you said it, where he brings something tangible still to the game, and there's enough there that you can work with that. But that's where the issue of taking out Cuckoo comes up, right? Again, is that you've got a guy that, sure, he doesn't move the puck any better than any of our other defensemen, but he sure as hell stops the play a lot more than some of our other defensemen have so far this year.
I'll say one last thing about Adam Larson. I would say that 90% of his game is being a shutdown defenseman and being able to break up the cycle in his own end. And if he's not doing that well, then what are you getting out of him? That's kind of my biggest quarrel with Adam Larson, is that he's not really going to give you anything in any other parts of his game. And that's half the reason they had to take Cuckoo out, because they had to get a puck mover in there with him. So,
although he does have more goals than Tyson Barrie so far this year.
That's true. That's true. He's a sniper.
Let's talk about the Big Finn. That's number 2 on our list of topics here. I mean, the Puljujarvi supporters are, I'll just say it, they're kind of acting like he just scored a hat trick. Like, I've been fighting with Dusty. I basically just grinding Dusty's gears, but I'm like, if that's a huge game, what do we call it when he scores? Like, he played great, and he looks like a really good fit there. I'll come to you first on this, Zach. What's he doing differently that's allowing him to work well in that top 6 or on that line with McDavid?
He's learned how to use his body, and he's grown into his body a little bit. I think that's probably one of the biggest shifts that we've seen in Puljujarvi's game. He's finishing checks. He's not shying away from engaging physically with players, and he's learning how to use his body in space. And there was that great clip that I shared on my Twitter the other night of him getting that one chance with 20 seconds left in the game where he almost scored, that single-handed effort to break around the defenseman and still get a shot attempt away on net. There's only 2 other guys on the Oilers team that can do that, and they both won Hart trophies in the NHL. So I think he's really learned how to kind of adapt his game, and he's really grown and matured physically as well. And I think that's what's really helping him in being able to be taking that next step in his game as a professional hockey player.
Dan?
Well, and I think that, like, Jesse Puljujarvi's fans, myself included, can be excused for being excited just because the search for right-handed or right-wing line mates for McDavid has been long overdue. And it's something that we talk about every single freaking year. And, for a team that had an asset sitting in Finland, relearning how to be the dominant player that he can be, that we all believe he can be, I think. It's exciting to watch. I don't think that I hope that people aren't saying that was an amazing game, because he didn't get the goals that he should have gotten. But you can just see it, like, even just in the celebrations, he wants to succeed, and he wants to be the guy that gets that goal. Like, he's, the Nugent Hopkins goal, he thought he scored it. He celebrated like he scored it.
I felt so bad for him.
But that's why, is because you can just see that he wants it. And he's not trying to steal the thunder from Nugent Hopkins. He's just excited to be there and happy to be contributing on that top line.
Josh, Jesse Puljujarvi, I believe, is plus 270 to score a goal tonight on most sports books. Does he get it tonight?
I think he does get it. Jay, we talked about this in our pregame show. Jay, I think, has already bet it, and I'm going to bet it. But yeah, I think JP is exactly, I've been saying this for years, man, that if you want to keep McDavid happy, you want to keep this franchise happy and the city happy, is we needed to get a good winger to play with McDavid. And like, I know this isn't on brand for us, but like, I'm not necessarily the biggest Ryan Nugent Hopkins fan in the world. Ugh. So I've been saying for years that like, I know that's like blasphemy in the nation for me to say I'm not a big RNH guy, but seriously, I just think that we needed a more certified, like, I'm here to score goals on McDavid's wing. Not saying that Ryan Nugent Hopkins can't do that. He had great numbers last year. He almost was a point per game player. But I think that if Jesse Puljujarvi can turn into that player for us, that's a huge win. So, or else Josh, we're going to have Taylor Hall in the offseason. So, Josh,
I think you're right. I do believe that Nugent Hopkins isn't necessarily like the best player to play up with him, but the benefit of Nugent Hopkins on your line is that you can be all offense all the time, because Nuge is going to come back and play that centerman role for McDavid. Like, there's so many situations where, the guy down low steals the puck and I'm like, oh, good job, McDavid. And then, oh, wait, that's Nugent Hopkins, because that's just the role that he plays. It's what he does. And McDavid is able to cheat up that way. So I agree with you. Nugent Hopkins hasn't been the best winger for McDavid, but for the fact that he's able to help him out on the defensive end.
I think getting an offensive-minded player like Puljujarvi and a big body that goes to the net and can hopefully retrieve pucks on the forecheck, I think that will make Nugent Hopkins almost look better on that McDavid line as well, because you'll appreciate him for what he actually is a little bit more. I think sometimes, yeah, you're right, Josh. He's maybe not the offensive sniper you want up there. He's supposed to be that defensive conscious, but when Zach Cassian's on the other side, you almost need Nugent Hopkins to be that sniper, and that's just not his game, right? And yeah. I think with Puljujarvi there, if he can be sort of McDavid's go-to guy in the offensive zone, we'll maybe start to appreciate what Nugent Hopkins brings, or I shouldn't say we, because it's not like we aren't, but like that side of his game will maybe be appreciated more by the rest of the fan base, so to say. It feels like this line, though, like I'm not saying that game was a huge game for JP, but it might have been a huge moment in the sense that if they keep building off this and that strong performance gives them 5 games together now in Dave Tippett's mind, like that could be a trio that really, really works out long term.
That game felt like, to me, I said it afterwards, I felt like the New York Rangers game on New Year's Eve last year. The one that the one that we called the TSN turning point, or I called the TSN turning point of the season. It just felt like there was some potential realized. We've got the top 2 lines kind of clicking now, hopefully going forward. And then they just need to put the effort in. Yeah. They absolutely dominated the Winnipeg Jets in the second period. They made them look like a joke. They let them back into the game in the third, but then they dominated again and took it at the end of the day. So yeah, it's. Did you guys see, by the way, that there was that guy that missed out on $22,000?
Oh yeah,
because they didn't go overtime.
Because they won the game with
that's bad.
7.7 seconds left to go.
Brutal, man.
That has to be one of the worst beats I've ever seen.
That's a bad beat.
Yeah,
that's an ugly one. Yeah.
I think I watched one year. I had a guy that I worked with that had a Pro Line 13 game parlay. That it went down to the Monday night game and he needed a tie between the Broncos and the Browns were just horse
tie.
Poop.
If you're searching for a tie in a 13-leg parlay, you don't deserve it.
No, exactly.
Last area I wanted to touch on here is Mikko Koskinen, who started every game for the Edmonton Oilers, and to me, hasn't been pretty at points, but he's kept them in a lot of hockey games, and there's been weak goals, but there's also been big saves, and I think starting all 7 games, facing the amount of chances he has, I think Mikko Koskinen's not getting enough love for his play. Zach, agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's been exactly what we've needed him to be this year, which is perfectly average. The Oilers' team save percentage in all situations this year is a 903 right now. It's good enough for 15th in the league heading into last night's lone game. And that's exactly what the Oilers were kind of looking for out of their goaltending this year, right? Was for, Koskinen and Smith to come in and be perfectly average goaltenders and hopefully give you some above average moments. And I think that's exactly what Koskinen's done. He's proven that he can be a bit of a workhorse right now for the Oilers. Thankfully he's got that day off in between every single game, but it's kind of allowed for him to kind of get into the games as well a little bit. I think 5-on-5, he's looked really, really well. And I'm really impressed with Koskinen. We all kind of scoffed at the contract when it was signed a couple of years ago. In hindsight, it's paying off for the Edmonton Oilers right now.
Still could be better though.
It could. Oh, of course, it could always be better. It could always be better. There's very few teams in the league who could say that they're very happy with their goaltending situation, right? Realistically, there's a lot of teams out there that could always use another goaltender or a better goaltender in that sense.
New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, I mean, they got 4 of them, right, Dan?
Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah,
they're holding on hope, right?
Canucks suck.
So it's going to be interesting to see, the way it kind of progresses over the course of the next few months here. Smith will come back at some point. He'll probably get a couple games in, but for a guy like Koskinen, he might be a guy who can run all the way with, playing maybe up to 48 games this season.
Holy shit!
Oh, that's a lot of games.
Like that's so many. Like you think about that,
it is. It's a lot. No, it's a lot of games for sure, right? But the way the schedules work so far, it's kind of allowed for Koskinen to seem fresh out there every night. There hasn't really been a game thus far, except for the back-to-back situation at the beginning of the year, where he really looked dogged out there. He's still out there and he's still competing every single night. So it's a bit of a hot take, I know. 48 games is a lot here, but it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Dan, what do you think?
Prediction, 23 wins. That's what I was going for. I didn't foresee this. element playing out. But yeah, I think that Mikko Koskinen, Josh, you can give your thoughts, but I think Mikko Koskinen has absolutely surprised and pleasantly surprised Oilers fans.
Yeah, Hero Ninja in the chat. Mikko's doing what he's being asked of. And honestly, that's all you can ask of him, man. Just keep us in games. We might have to win a few 4-3. We might lose a couple 5-3. But for the most part, I think he's just been really, really solid.
I think that differing from last year, what we're getting from Mikko this year is we're getting the big save at the moment when we need it. Because that's what they've always said that in the NHL is that the best goalies make the big save when you really need it. And I think in the first few games of the season for us, we were looking at it and we're like, oh, is Mikko going to give that for us? And then all of a sudden now we've seen a switch in the last couple where it's like, okay, we're getting that big save when we need it. And Zach, I 100% agree with you. I think that right now what we're getting out of Mikko Koskinen is 100% above maybe what we expected and above average, which is what we needed. But I also look at it and I'm like, okay, I'm just waiting for that first situation where we're in a back-to-back. And then in the first game of that back-to-back, Mikko Koskinen faces like 45 shots. And then all of a sudden on that second half of the back-to-back, you're like, oh, well, we can't really start him again. So now we're going to Stuart Skinner. And then I think even like, okay, now we're sitting at we're in that 40 to 45 game range on the season. And we've seen what's happened to Mikko Koskinen in the second half of seasons before. He gets dogged, man. He can't really take on that workload as much. And then if we're looking at it at that point, like I don't want to look too far ahead. I want to look at the games we have in front of us. But it makes me nervous thinking about, okay, I love the start we're getting out of him, and he looks great right now. But I'm wondering what we're going to get out of him in that 40 to 45 game range when he's trying to play back-to-backs on 40 shots. And it's like, we're kind of in a tough spot now.
I think you're hoping that by that point, though, Smith's back and Smith can handle some starts, or like even by this back-to-back coming up here where you're going to get the Senators. I think on that second game against the Sens, you're either playing Grosnick if he's ready to go. I'm not sure if he is going to be, or like, come on, man. The Senators are garbage right now. If you want to sneak Stuart Skinner into a game, you can probably do it against Ottawa.
Jimmy Stutzel. What are you talking about? He's back.
Yeah, but I mean, the Sens have lost 5 in a row now. Like they're
brutal. They looked terrible last night.
The Oilers should trade for Matt Murray, but he hasn't really played that good either. But
there's something else I'll point out too in terms of the goaltending situation for the rest of the season. The Oilers, obviously we got the 56 game schedule. The Oilers have 8 back-to-backs left in the remainder of the season. Mm-hmm. So you split those up and you say, okay, goaltenders split for those back-to-backs the rest of the way. That's still 48. That would still be 48 games played. Yeah. Mikko Koskinen by the end of the season, so I don't know if it's necessarily super unrealistic for that to happen. No. And, coming up at the start of February, there's going to be 3 days off for the Oilers as well between Ottawa and Winnipeg. And then they don't really have another 3-game break for the rest of the season. So it's going to be interesting to kind of follow that.
Before we wrap up the show, first off, happy birthday to Wayne Gretzky. The GOAT turned 60.
Wayne Glensky.
Yeah. I'm obviously, I think, like, most of us except maybe Dan, do you have Wayne Gretzky memories? Do you remember watching him play at all, or were you too young?
Yeah, I went to see a game.
Okay.
I saw one of his first games back as a King. I don't remember much more than it was a game that I was actually supposed to go see a game that got postponed due to snow. and then they allowed you to transfer the tickets, and somehow I ended up with a Kings game ticket.
Interesting.
So I got to see that, but yeah.
For me, like, obviously too young to have ever watched him play, but watching the NHL now and then looking at his records, to me, I feel like I almost, in a weird way, like, appreciate Gretzky more, because I'm like, how could anyone have ever been that good? Like, Wayne Gretzky is almost more of a legend for the people who never got to watch him, because you're, like, mind-boggled at how he put up these numbers. I know that doesn't make a ton of sense, but that's my take on it.
Oh, it does. It does. I totally agree with you. It's that larger than life, aura that comes with them, right? Like I still ask my dad. My dad, watched the Oilers of the '80s in their heyday, and I asked him, I was like, what was it like? And he was just always blown away, flabbergasted to see what he could do, Gretzky on a night-to-night basis. I mean, I know, speaking for myself, I want to go back and try and rewatch some of those old games just to be able to actually see. What the hell he was like in his heyday.
He just dummied guys.
Before we wrap things up here, we'll just quickly go around the board. Give me your score predictions tonight, everybody. Dan, I'll start with you.
3-1 Oilers win.
3-1 Oilers. Ooh, big night for Mikko. Zach?
I'm going to go 3-zip for the Oilers. We got a shutout coming in tonight, and we're going to see a Puljujärvi goal.
All right, there you go.
Anytime, baby.
Josh, what are you?
Zach is certified in love with Mikko Koskinen. I love it.
Josh, what are we getting for a score tonight?
7-5 Oilers.
7-5. You think they're putting 7 past Connor Hellebuck? Hello. Yeah. I don't think the Oilers are putting that many past Hellebuck. I'm going to say it's real tight. I'll say a 3-2 Oilers win in overtime is what we're getting. We'll get a Jack Michaels overtime winner call. All right. That's going to wrap it up for another episode of State of the Nation. Shout out to Zach, Josh, and Dan for joining me. And shout out to you for tuning in and hopping in on the Twitch and Twitter streams as well. We'll talk to you again next Tuesday. Enjoy the game tonight.